G'day everyone, for those of you who don't know me already, I'm Ryan O'Shea, otherwise known as Bite Nibble Chomp, the developer of the Strategic Command American Civil War and the Wars in the Americas DLC. Today I've got something very special to show you. In the 1.08 release for American Civil War, we're going to be including a new campaign, 1904 Imperial Sunrise, covering the Russo-Japanese War. And Old Crow Balthazor has agreed to play against me in a preview of this campaign. We're going to do a full multiplayer series. I'm going to be commanding the Russians, he will be taking the Japanese. So a couple of months ago, him and I played the 1879 Ghost of the Pacific campaign, which is part of the Wars in the Americas DLC. He came closer than anyone else I've played to beating me in a fully released campaign. So, sure to have a very tough battle ahead of me. First off, let's see what the Japanese are doing. The campaign starts on February 9th, 1904. That's immediately after the surprise attacks of the first night of war, bombarding Chomolko, which is now Incheon, and Port Arthur. Sending in his fleet, trying to knock out the Russian Pacific Fleet there. Bombarding the fortress. Finally gets one of the battleships. Historically, the Japanese didn't actually sink any battleships in the initial attack, but they did heavily damage quite a few of them. It is possible to sink at least one, as you've seen here. I've heard it's possible to even get two of them. I've never actually managed it myself, but well, the gods of war are interesting, aren't they? So he has departed. We get some torpedo boats. They were in the port at the beginning of the war, but they just spawn in on first turn. Alright. So, we will be playing as the bloke that was sort of, I think he was called the Viceroy of the Far East, the guy who's sort of in charge of the Far Eastern area, but not quite the Tsar himself. So, we've got General Kuropatkin. He's telling us that he's been appointed commander of the forces Manchuria, and he says that it will take 6 months to raise a force of 200,000 men, which he thinks will be enough in order to defeat the Japanese. He's also warning us that the Japanese are very strong opponents. As I said, I've played OCB before. He is a very strong opponent, so this is going to be very interesting. We're also being told by the commander of the Pacific Fleet we need to enforce a blockade of Japan. That'll reduce their fighting spirit. Once these messages are gone, I'll show you around the map. And here's the Baltic Fleet. Talk about them more in a bit. They're probably my favourite part of the whole campaign. So this is the campaign map. Goes from the coast of China over there all the way. That's Sakhalin Island. Part of that was occupied in 1905 by the Japanese. Got Vladivostok here, as well as the squadron of cruisers that was based there. Got Korea, which is under Japanese occupation from pretty much the moment the war began, really. Then we've got Port Arthur. Got the Trans-Siberian Railroad, goes from Port Arthur through Mukden, which is sort of our big base around here. Further north, Harbin, and then it sort of cuts. There's two routes. One goes south, well, it's not really south, it's more southeast to Vladivostok, and got another route that goes eventually back to Moscow. This map is on a bit of an angle. North is about 20-30 degrees that way, rather than being a straight line up. I just thought making this map, it made it fit a bit better doing that. So we've got the Pacific Fleet here. We've got one battleship sunk and another damaged, and then the other two have been lightly damaged. Got some torpedo boats. We can also deploy a few more torpedo boats. Oh, worry about them in a second. Got Fortress here. Got a couple of units there. Then we've got the army. We've got the Eastern Detachment, which is so sitting on the Yalu River. And we've got the Western Detachment further north. Oh. Yeah, that'd be slightly north, I think. I'm going to say north. I really mean northwest. Again, the map's angled a bit, but it's just so I could fit the areas I want on the map without having too much empty space. Planned Snow Tiger. Well, mate, you do know the snow's going to melt soon. We'll find out just how strong his Snow Tiger is then. So we got 1,500 points. If you've played the 1898 campaign, you'll be a bit familiar with that idea of being able to just purchase your army right from the start of the campaign. All of the Russian forces in this war, apart from the small garrisons that are in the Far East already, had to come all the way from Europe. So this gives us a bit of flexibility in what we want to do. We're not going to get any more units spawning in other than the torpedo boats we saw on turn 1. So I think the number one priority for Russia really is getting a force into the field. Something to think about is that the infantry, the same as in the Civil War campaigns, they only have spotting range of 1, so we'll want to purchase some units that have spotting, can get some balloons, or cavalry is probably the most useful. It's worth noting, because this campaign takes place a bit later than the Civil War campaigns and the other ones in our Wars in the Americas DLC, the cavalry's a bit less effective, and the infantry's got much better cavalry defense than in the earlier eras. Can also purchase some artillery, brigades, HQs, all of those things will be very useful. So Russia has about double the income that the Japanese have, but the Japanese begin this campaign with an army pretty well deployed. Most of the ports around Japan have a force in them. All of their units start experienced, and the Japanese player has the option of also upgrading them to the overstrength before sending them into battle. So when we do fight the Japanese, they're going to be very strong. They do only have division-sized units, which are slightly weaker than the corps, but the difference between the Japanese division and the Russian corps is not that much. The Russians were very much the less effective power. Our units are also quite a bit slower than the Japanese, so we've really got like just delay the Japanese for long enough that our production advantage can really kick in, because Japan only gets half of our income. So the longer the war goes on, the more to their disadvantage it's going to be. So the Japanese, what they're going to do, he's going to land most of his units probably in Seoul or possibly in Chinampo once the ice melts in March. Then he's going to come up here, have to smash through my army. I'm probably just going to deploy it on the Yalu River like the Russians did historically. If you start marching into Korea too soon, you just won't have enough units to actually maintain a position. Japan can just go around them. Then the Japanese, once they get here, they've got to worry about Port Arthur, which is really the big objective in the campaign. And they're also going to look to capture the fighting spirit objectives, particularly Liaoyang, New Chuang, Mukden eventually. If he gets all of these, then Russian fighting spirit's going to start crumbling, and the Tsar might even get overthrown. If that happens, the game ends immediately. But they also have quite a bit less fighting spirit. The Japanese have 30,000, the Russians have, well, a bit less than 50,000 now. The winds sank half my navy, but ultimately what we've got to do is just slow him down and hold the objectives long enough until we can eventually turn the tide. Once the Japanese get stopped, they're probably not going to take the advance again. They're just not going to have the reserves to do so. The Japanese fleet at the moment is quite a bit larger now, as well as being experienced. The IJN, same as the army, all their units start experienced. Ours don't. Ours also start damaged, which is truly wonderful. But eventually, the Baltic Fleet will also leave. That they can't be moved or can't do anything while they're here. They just will sit there. But eventually, the Tsar's going to say, "Alright, let's send those to the Pacific." These will disappear. A bit later, they'll appear in the East China Sea, at which point we get to decide if we want to battle the Japanese, send them into Port Arthur, Vladivostok. A lot of things that you can do with them, but they won't arrive until the historical point in May 1905, so we've really got to win the war, or at least get ourselves in a position to win the war much before then. If we're still getting pushed back by the Japanese a year from now, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So my priority at the start is really get these ships out of trouble. It's worth noting torpedo boats can lay naval mines. That's a feature that we did intend to include in American Civil War originally, but I just found it didn't work as well as I'd like, so I didn't end up using it there, but I've used it in this campaign. What I'm going to do, rather than putting my units in Port Arthur where he's definitely going to be constantly harassing them, I'm going to deploy them all up here. I'm just going to bombard his battleship. Might do some damage. I want to see what he does with his ships, but I imagine he's just going to either mine this area or keep the fleet watching to see if I do anything. With two battleships plus a crippled one, I'm not going to get a lot accomplished. I'm going to deploy the torpedo boats. I'm only going to deploy the ones where he won't be able to see where they are. I don't need to get them just sunk, which is what's going to happen if he knows that I've got them out. He's got his entire fleet and obviously threw it at the port defences, so he's going to be quite aggressive with them. And unit wise, I'm going to buy 2 cavalry and 2 corps. They're not going to arrive for a few months, so I'm just going to grab that. That will just give us some advance warning that he's nearby. Bring this down. I'm going to deploy that unit there, just so he can't do a naval invasion somewhere. I suppose it's probably worth having that in Talisu as well. We've also got a couple of garrisons in Vladivostok. I'm going to leave those where they are. It's pretty hard for the Japanese to actually capture Vladivostok, particularly if they don't bring any artillery. So as long as we keep a small garrison here, should be able to hold it. The supply through this area is not at all good. And Vladivostok itself is worth quite a bit in fighting spirit, but it won't accomplish a lot in terms of actually winning the war. You're much better off focusing most of your efforts as Japan towards Port Arthur and Mukden, which are probably the 2 biggest objectives of the game. So that's about all for this turn, but I'd advise you to subscribe to the channel, keep watching. We're going to upload episodes of this series daily. I look forward to showing you more of this new campaign. We'll be releasing on June the 29th, as far as I know, or at least that's the date we're using at the moment. I'm recording this a few weeks before any of these episodes go up, so something might change between now and then, but shouldn't be too long. It'll be a free patch for everyone who owns Strategic Command Civil War. So if you have the game, then you'll get this campaign for free when you update to 1.08. So, thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time.